The Whitmore Hotel was quiet on Sunday evenings. Its concrete floors carried no echo, just the soft hush of dim lighting and curated jazz drifting through hidden speakers. Behind the front desk, Sienna Hart adjusted her name tag for the third time that hour. Her shift had been uneventful, a few checkouts, a guest complaining about the valet, but mostly silence, just the way she liked it. At 7:18 p.m., the front door slid open. He walked in without urgency. No entouraje, no cameras. Just a tall man in a gray hoodie, black jeans, and worn Nike sneakers. A baseball cap tugged low over his brow. He carried nothing but a phone in one hand and a key card in the other. Sienna straightened instinctively. Her eyes scanned him, not because she was alarmed, exactly, just uncertain. Guests like him usually came in with more ceremony, more proof of belonging. "Good evening," she offered, polite but practiced. "Can I help you?" He nodded once. "Yeah, I'm here to check on the Summit Lounge. Should still have access." Sienna blinked. "The Summit Lounge is a restricted area, sir. It's reserved for registered VIPs. "I know," he said, calm. "I built it." She paused, eyes narrowing just slightly. His voice was low, steady. No hint of confrontation, but something in his tone carried a weight that didn't match the hoodie. "Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" she asked. "No." She hesitated. "Then I'm afraid I can't grant access without confirmation." The man didn't flinch. He looked past her for a moment, his eyes sweeping the lobby. The polished concrete, the curated wall art, the soft leather furniture. He'd chosen every detail. Months of work, meetings, revisions. And yet here he stood, unrecognized. "Can you call Richard Monroe?" he asked, voice still even. Sienna hesitated again. "Mr. Monroe is off-site today. If you'd like, I can. I'm sure someone else can help," he said quietly. A moment passed. One of the bellhops looked up from behind the concierge stand. The barista, wiping counters near the cafe, slowed her movements but didn't speak. No one did. Sienna reached under the desk and tapped a discreet button. Not an alarm, just a quiet request for assistance. A precaution. The man noticed. His eyes flicked to her hand, just for a second, then back to her face. "I'll wait right here," he said, stepping aside without irritation, as if he had all the time in the world. But the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was pressure, invisible but growing. And somewhere deep in the building, 2 security officers were already on their way. Sienna tried to steady her breathing as she glanced down at the monitor beneath the desk. A blinking icon confirmed her request had gone through. She told herself she wasn't overreacting. He hadn't threatened her, hadn't raised his voice. But something felt off. No reservation, no ID, just confidence. The kind of confidence that didn't ask permission. She stole another glance at him. He was standing a few feet away now, near the oversized painting of the city skyline, hands at his sides. Still, watching the light shift across the glass coffee table like he had nowhere else to be. There was nothing aggressive about him. That, somehow, unnerved her more. The bellhop behind the concierge desk was watching too, his lips parted as if about to say something, but he didn't. The barista had disappeared behind the espresso machine. Nobody moved. Sienna pulled up the guest directory again, typing quickly. No James. No Bron. No alias she could think of. Nothing matched. Her training echoed in her mind. Maintain professionalism. Prioritize safety. Follow protocol. She was following protocol. 2 short chimes echoed from the elevator bay. The security team had arrived. Darnell and Rick. Both in their 40s, both former military, both known for handling problems without drama. They moved with purpose but not speed, scanning the lobby with alert eyes. When they spotted LeBron, their pace slowed. Rick approached the desk. "You called for backup?" Sienna nodded, her voice quiet. "This guest claims he has access to the Summit Lounge, but isn't on our records. No reservation. He wouldn't give a last name." Rick's brow creased. Did he cause a disturbance? No, she admitted. But he wouldn't leave the area when asked. Rick exchanged a glance with Darnell. Then both turned toward LeBron. He hadn't moved. "Evening, sir," Rick said, approaching. "Can we help you with something?" LeBron looked at them calmly. "You can call Richard Monroe." Rick's posture stiffened. He knew that name. Everyone on staff did. Monroe wasn't just the general manager. He was the bridge between ownership and daily operations. And he didn't get name-dropped by strangers. "What name should I give him?" Rick asked, cautious now. "Tell him LeBron stopped by." The words hit like a switch. Rick blinked. Darnell froze beside him. Sienna's face went blank. A half-beat passed. Then Rick muttered, "Excuse me a moment," and stepped away, already dialing. LeBron returned to silence, his gaze fixed on a sculpture near the front window. It was shaped like an open hand. No one spoke. Sienna stood still, her pulse pounding, a low static rising in her ears. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't said anything offensive. She'd followed protocol. Hadn't she? Rick was speaking softly now, one hand over his mouth, pacing just out of earshot. Darnell remained near LeBron, not confrontational, but watchful, uneasy. The lobby, so curated and quiet just 10 minutes earlier, now held a different kind of stillness. Not designed, not comfortable. Something had shifted. Rick returned to the group with the phone still in hand. His expression had changed. There was no question now, just certainty and the discomfort that followed it. "He's on his way," Rick said quietly, not looking at Sienna. "Not yet." LeBron offered a polite nod. "Appreciate it." Darnell, who hadn't said a word until now, stepped back slightly, as if distance might dilute the awkwardness settling in. He glanced over at the bellhop, who immediately busied himself with folding brochures. Sienna's fingers curled inward. She didn't speak. She had followed the handbook to the letter. Hadn't she? No yelling, no accusations, just caution. That's what the handbook called it. Caution. But something inside her twisted anyway, because she could feel it now, the edges of understanding pressing in. The reason his voice had carried so much control. Why he hadn't reacted. Why he hadn't tried to defend himself or explain. He hadn't needed to. He'd expected this. She watched him closely, trying to piece together the image, the hoodie, the stillness, the eyes that missed nothing. She'd seen the posters, the commercials, the ESPN clips. But here, without context, without warning, he hadn't looked like the man from the billboards. He had just looked normal, which meant forgettable, which meant suspect. A soft electronic chime broke the silence. The elevator again, then footsteps. Fast, assured. Richard Monroe stepped into the lobby, his blazer half-buttoned, tie askew, expression taut. He scanned the room until his eyes landed on LeBron. He stopped short. "Mr. James," he breathed, "I had no idea you were coming in tonight." LeBron turned toward him, not cold, not angry, just steady. "I know." Monroe crossed the space quickly, offering his hand. "My apologies. Had we known, I would have." "I didn't announce it on purpose," LeBron said, his tone light but unblinking. Monroe hesitated. His handshake faltered halfway. The silence around them grew sharper. Sienna's breath caught. Every staff member in the lobby was watching now. Rick and Darnell stood rooted. The concierge looked down. The barista disappeared again. LeBron turned slightly toward the others. "This your new front desk?" Monroe swallowed. "Yes, she started a few weeks ago." Still, LeBron didn't raise his voice. Still, he didn't look at Sienna. He didn't have to. The weight of the moment had already landed. Richard Monroe turned toward Sienna, his face caught between managerial poise and private dismay. His voice, when it came, was too soft to hide the undertone. Did you not recognize him?" Sienna's throat went dry. The words wouldn't come. She tried to force a smile, something apologetic, something that could explain away the moment. But all that surfaced was a thin whisper, "No, sir." Monroe's gaze lingered on her for a beat too long, then flicked to the security team. "Did anyone hear?" he asked, not sharply but plainly. No one answered. The bellhop shifted uncomfortably behind the concierge stand. Rick adjusted his collar. Darnell looked down at his shoes. The barista peeked around the espresso machine, and quickly disappeared again. Silence folded in on itself. LeBron stood exactly where he had been when he walked in, still, composed, hand by his sides. He hadn't moved an inch. He didn't need to, because it was happening already. The realization wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It arrived like cold air through a cracked window, slowly, and then all at once. The staff weren't just realizing who he was. They were realizing what they had done. They'd read him by silhouette, by hoodie, by posture. Not by presence, not by merit, just appearance. And the man they'd hesitated to assist, hovered around, questioned, and, in Sienna's case, quietly flagged for backup, was the man whose name was etched in the donor plaque near the elevator. The man who had designed the very lounge they were trying to keep him from entering. LeBron finally spoke. People show you who they are when they think you don't matter. He wasn't angry. He wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. But the words struck like a bell, clear and slow and impossible to unhear. Monroe opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. LeBron turned his eyes to Sienna at last. "I'm not here to make a scene." Her face was flushed now. She opened her mouth, desperate to say I'm sorry, but the words didn't come. She had no idea what she looked like in that moment, just that every part of her felt exposed. "I came to see if the space was still being used the way I intended," LeBron said quietly. "Community groups, local programs, quiet places for kids to think big." He let that linger. "Didn't think I'd have to prove I belonged in it." Nobody moved. It was too quiet now for apologies to mean anything. Monroe took a slow breath. His gaze, usually confident, now flickered with uncertainty. "Mr. James," he began, "I take full responsibility." Had I? LeBron held up a hand. Not rudely, just enough to stop him. "This isn't about your apology, Richard." Monroe closed his mouth. LeBron's eyes scanned the lobby again. The bellhop, still pretending to reorganize brochures. The barista, half hidden behind a sleek brass espresso machine. Rick and Darnell, standing stiff in uniforms that now felt slightly too formal, like costumes for the wrong play. And Sienna, frozen behind the front desk, her hands clenched below the counter. Her face unreadable. LeBron stepped forward, not toward anyone in particular, just toward the center of the lobby, where his voice would carry without needing to rise. "I've spent most of my adult life being recognized," he said, "on screens, on courts, in headlines." A pause. "But every once in a while, I step into a room without that recognition. No cameras, no fanfare, just me." His voice was soft, but unshakable. "And every time, I get to see something most people never do, how a place really runs. Who gets the benefit of the doubt? Who gets asked to wait? Who gets watched?" He turned his head slightly, not at Sienna directly, but close enough that her posture tightened. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came here because this space, this hotel, was supposed to mean something. Not just style, not just comfort, but trust." Another pause. Not long. Just enough. "I wanted this place to reflect a different kind of welcome. One that doesn't depend on what someone's wearing, or how they walk, or whether they happen to be famous." He glanced once toward the Summit Lounge, still roped off, still guarded by silence. "Turns out," he said, voice almost wistful, "I was asking too much." No one dared to speak. Monroe's mouth moved, forming nothing. Sienna's breath came shallow now, her eyes shining, not with tears, but with that slow-burning awareness that shame brings. Not the kind meant to punish, but the kind that lingers long after the moment ends. LeBron didn't wait for a reply. He simply said, "You don't fix this with comps or statements. You fix it with clarity." And with that, he turned toward the exit. No one followed him right away. The soft click of LeBron's shoes on the polished floor echoed louder than the music that had faded into background static. Each step toward the glass doors felt deliberate, final, not in volume, but in meaning. Sienna stood behind the desk, hands still braced on the edge of the counter, knuckles pale. She didn't speak. She couldn't. The words were trapped beneath layers of protocol, pride, and something else she couldn't name, something that had started as certainty and now felt dangerously close to regret. Behind her, the bellhop had stopped pretending to work. His eyes followed LeBron's silhouette like it might teach him something. The barista remained half-hidden, her face ghosted with discomfort. Rick and Darnell exchanged a glance. They didn't move either. It wasn't fear that held them. It was reckoning, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. Richard Monroe remained near the center of the lobby, shoulders heavy with the realization that all his polished professionalism, the carefully crafted guest experience, the inclusive luxury branding had unraveled in a single, quiet visit. A visit that hadn't even lasted 20 minutes. He watched as LeBron reached the door. No sound followed him. No camera flash. No dramatic flourish. Just the hush that comes when everyone is forced to feel something they can't yet describe. Sienna opened her mouth. Mr. James. But he didn't stop. He didn't turn. The glass doors slid open with a soft sigh. And then he was gone. For a moment, the lobby didn't move. No one returned to work. No one spoke. Even the music seemed to understand it was the wrong time. And in that silence, something shifted. Not enough to fix anything, but enough to name it. Enough to make sure it wouldn't be forgotten. Outside, the evening air had cooled. The sky over downtown Los Angeles carried that muted blue-gray that settles in before city lights reclaim the skyline. LeBron stepped onto the curb and paused for a moment. No one chased after him. No one shouted apologies. And he hadn't expected them to. A black SUV idled a few feet away. The driver stepped out, ready to open the door, but LeBron gave a small shake of his head. All right up front. The driver nodded once and stepped aside. As the car pulled away from the curb, LeBron glanced once through the tinted window, back at the lobby, now framed in warm light. From this distance, it looked like any other hotel. Polished, inviting, quiet. But he knew the stillness wasn't peace. Not yet. Inside, the lobby remained frozen. Sienna hadn't moved from the desk. Her fingers were trembling slightly now, though she kept them hidden beneath the counter. A question hovered in her chest, burning with weight. What did I really see when he walked in? Not a man, not a guest, not a name, just a silhouette that made her unsure. And then defensive. And then, worse, certain. Monroe rubbed a hand over his mouth, pacing slowly in a circle that never quite landed. He was thinking of statements, of meetings, of damage. But somewhere behind all that, another thought clawed its way to the surface. How long has this been true beneath our hospitality? Rick and Darnell remained near the elevator, not guarding anymore, just lingering, like they weren't quite ready to return to what they'd been. The silence remained thick. Nobody rushed to break it. And then the music returned, not by intention, just by the loop resetting. A soft saxophone note trickled into the air. Sienna blinked. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. Should I go home? She asked, not looking at Monroe. He didn't answer right away, because the truth was he didn't know. Outside, LeBron leaned back in the passenger seat. He didn't take out his phone. Didn't speak. He just stared ahead at the slow roll of the city, streetlights gliding across the windshield like distant spotlights that no longer interested him. The driver glanced over. Everything all right, sir? LeBron nodded once. Yeah, then added more softly. Just another lobby. The next morning, the Whitmore Hotel lobby looked the same. But it wasn't. Sienna arrived 10 minutes early, eyes dull from sleep she hadn't managed to find. Her uniform was pressed, her badge straight. Her heart, however, was not. No one had told her if she still had a job, but no one had told her not to come in either. She passed through the staff in trance with a silence she hadn't worn before. There were whispers in the break room. Heads turned. Conversations stalled. No one said her name, but she felt it being carried in the spaces between sentences. At 9 a.m., Monroe held a closed-door meeting with the entire front-of-house team. No speech, no performance, just a single printed agenda on the table. What we saw, what we missed. The meeting lasted 42 minutes. Nobody raised their voice. But nobody looked away. They talked about unconscious bias, about silence, about what it meant to follow protocol when protocol itself was laced with assumption. Sienna spoke once, not to excuse, but to admit. I saw someone unexpected and decided it meant unwelcome. I didn't question why I thought that. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Truth, when it's finally spoken, doesn't need volume. After the meeting, Monroe stood outside the lounge doors for a long time, staring at the plaque that bore LeBron's name. Not a dedication, just 3 words he'd once insisted on, open to everyone. By the end of the day, staff were scheduled for equity training. Not the check-the-box kind. The real kind. The kind that hurts before it helps. None of it would fix what happened, but it would name it. And naming something is how you start to change it. Elsewhere, LeBron sat in a small gym tucked behind a youth center in Compton. No cameras, no press, just a dozen kids and a coach who had no idea what had happened the night before. He watched the kid miss 2 free throws in a row, shake his head, and mutter, "Guess I'm not good enough." LeBron stood slowly and walked to the baseline. "You missed," he said. "Doesn't mean you don't belong." The kid looked up, nodded, and tried again. That night, a clip from a security camera inside the hotel leaked online. Just a silent frame of LeBron standing calmly in the middle of the lobby, hands in his pockets, posture quiet, eyes steady. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't viral. But for those who watched closely, it said everything.